If you're joining us, jumping in, or have just joined us, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very, very excited to dive on in. Without any further ado, I'd love to introduce you all to Amy. Amy is an experienced in-house legal counsel setting intellectual property strategy across the global Bluescope steel business. She's worked in a number of private practice IP teams and has spent the last 8 years or so in-house legal, corporate legal teams. Day to day, Amy is responsible for IP awareness across the Bluescope global business. She advises on all litigation and commercial transactions involving intellectual property and oversees the company's extensive global IP portfolio. But the part of her role that Amy is most passionate about is changing the corporate culture in relation to IP. She spends a lot of time uplifting knowledge about IP, improving the processes and practices, and changing existing attitudes in her practice area. The work requires an innovative mindset, being open to change, being willing to try new things and open to different ways of working, and obviously figuring out how to bring stakeholders along for that quite complex journey. This mindset makes Amy a natural relationship partner for the Checkbox product. So we are so excited, Amy, to have you in today. Thank you so much for giving up your time and sharing some of the love in terms of your journey and what you've gone through so far.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting. The Checkbox program's fantastic. So it's a really important part of our legal operations and automation journey. So
awesome.
Excited to be here.
Amy, before we move on, is there anything that I missed that you wanted to share in terms of your background or anything that you've been through, or should we jump straight into what we're going to be talking about today?
No, I'm happy to jump in if you are.
Amazing. Let's do it. Okay. So to kick things off, we're going to be going through the why, what, how, and then a little bit of advice from Amy on their journey with legal operations and how they have implemented Checkbox and some of the things that they've done in the technology space for legal that has enabled some really, really great benefit, some really incredible ROI, but also looking through the journey and picking out some key learnings. There is no journey that is interesting to talk about without having some really interesting learnings along the way. So before we go too deep into the Checkbox or the legal automation side of things, Amy, tell us a little bit about Bluescope.
So Bluescope, probably everyone knows Bluescope best through some of our core products, particularly in Australia. So we've Colorbond and Zincaloon, but there we are a flat coated steel producer, which sounds terribly boring, but it's it gets really exciting when you start working in it. So we deal with all of the componentry within the flat steel industry. So we not only make the steel, we flatten it out into steel coils, we coat it with anti-corrosive protective coatings, and we can paint it. So you see that's where you get Colorbond. And then we have our downstream business where you take your coated painted steel and turn it into, basically wrinkle it and turn it into building components like guttering and corrugated iron that you see on roofs. So it's a pretty complex business. We operate in most places around the Pacific Rim. So our core business in Australia, but we've also got a significant presence in the US, Southeast Asia, the Pacific Islands, New Zealand, and China, and in India as well. So particularly in IP and also in the world of legal operations, it's quite a fragmented business. It's got because there are so many different ways of working, different business units, and then there are so many different regions. That's all brought together by a corporate group as well, which is here in Melbourne, where I'm based. And that corporate group sets the head office functions, and it also advises on initiatives that have global significance and strategic significance across the whole corporate group. The legal team is structured so that we have a legal team in every region, and we also have a group in corporate as well. I think, like a lot of in-house teams, most of the lawyers are quite senior, so we're either senior subject matter experts or we're leading leading a business or leading the legal function for a particular business in a particular region. So that adds to, I guess that gives a little bit of a basis for the sort of work that we want to be doing, and it gives you a sense of the sort of work where this team can add the most value. And I think that's really where you have to start looking for solutions, like, for instance, like Checkbox, to help you, really work in your sweet spot.
That's perfect, and a really, really great segue into, I guess, why you should start this journey. Why legal operations? Why automation? What's in it? You touched on some really interesting things. The average seniority of the legal team really doesn't lend itself to doing repetitive, menial tasks. It would drive that sort of level of person crazy, but also it's a really, really bad utilization of them as a resource. So that's a really interesting thing, I think, to touch on to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, it's not only are you sort of is the business not getting the value out of the people they're paying senior wages for, and you've got these senior resources available. It's also not really what those lawyers want to be doing. So you're making, if you can, drafting endless NDAs is not where you really want to be spending your time, and it's not what's exciting to the people in the business. I think a lot of in-house lawyers are attracted to the commercial aspects of the job rather than the pure black letter legal work. So I think it's important to be able to get them operating where they want to operate as well, for the lawyers and the business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in that case, let's jump into the why. For Bluescope in particular, what was the importance of this program? You've touched on it a little bit, but let's go deep. Let's talk about a couple of different angles.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe a bit of an overview, and then thinking about it from an innovation lens, thinking about the innovation process in particular.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to go to the why, it's really built on trying to get lawyers doing the work that they should be doing and that they want to be doing. But I think it is also, just jumping back up a step, I think in pretty much any in-house legal team, the work is, or certainly the ones I've been involved with, the work is never ending. Like I've had one former GC described it to me as like a bad version of the Magic Pudding, which is a kid's book where it didn't matter how much of the pudding the characters ate, it just continually reformed. So it was just always, it didn't matter what you did to it, it was always there. And I think that is very much in-house. So I think you've got to find a way, that's just the reality of it. So you need to find a way that you can make your life easier. So there needs to be better, and you're also probably running a lot leaner in terms of resourcing and systems than, say, for instance, a private practice law firm. So it needs to, and because you're so busy, you need to sort of find a way to manage that better. You need to find a way to manage your matters better, to help you do your invoices and track costs. And you need to be able to just get that churny sort of work out of the way. So I think we've done a fair bit of work over the years, and it constantly comes out that our biggest pain point is that we can't get to those really high value but non-time bound tasks. We can't look at setting different strategies or doing those cultural pieces because you're just stuck in the day-to-day grind. So about 4 years ago, which was actually before my time, but I'm actually really passionate about legal operations, so I kind of stuck my nose in as soon as I joined. But we looked at what was going on. So we stepped back. I think when you're talking about legal innovation and legal ops, it's a real temptation to jump straight to the tech solutions, and obviously that is really helpful. But I think at the first point, you've got to really stop and look at what are your pain points? What are the processes that you're doing? How can you manually shift some of those to make it so that you're working better? And so that's how we identified the issues, that those areas, like I mentioned before, the matter management, the billing, and invoices and things like that just take up a lot of time. So we identified those as issues. And we found we not only changed the way we worked, we found some tech solutions that would solve a lot of that. But then you come down to you still got the issue that you're not getting onto those high value tasks. So I think you can cut that two different ways. So we've tried, when we have tried, and it does work to a degree, but we've tried to carve out huge chunks of time. We've tried to raise at least within our corporate team, we've tried to raise the awareness and drive a bit of accountability, because I think for some of those more high value, non-time bound tasks, I think because it's always, no one's screaming to have them done. No one's chasing you for them. They're not really necessarily tied to a KPI. It would make your life better if you did them, but you just can't get there. And so we've tried to carve out time. We've tried to drive a bit of accountability by having team stand-ups on a fortnightly basis, so that we're kind of bringing them to the surface. But at the end of the day, you're still going to do that work that your stakeholder in a business unit is screaming for and needs to get, just keep the wheels of industry turning, I suppose. So we had to find a way, sort of a bottom-up approach as well. And that's probably where Checkbox came in. We knew we needed a solution. We wanted to automate some of those processes that you do that don't necessarily fall. There's no real obvious solution for them. So I think there's a lot of work that you don't really want to be doing it. It's not, as we've spoken about, it's not the best use of resources to have a senior in-house lawyer working on those sort of pieces of work. But also, it doesn't make sense financially or in terms of from a time perspective to outsource that to a law firm, because they're too expensive. They have a slightly different risk profile. I think law firms are typically, on the whole, minded to solve for every single risk, and not they can't give you the advice that, like, oh, we can probably live with that just to get the job done. So I think you do need that sort of in-house lens. So and it's also very expensive. A lot of the time the work is not huge. Like, each individual task is not huge. So by the time you briefed it out, it's actually not worth, you'd have done the work before you would have briefed it out. And I don't think the law firms have necessarily cracked that yet. So there needed to be some way that we could control it. And I think that's when we came to look at automation solutions like Checkbox. And we also look, and then there are a range of solutions available on the market. But I think at the end of the day, what attracted us to Checkbox was it's a sophisticated tool, and it can do a lot of different things. It's got a lot of functionality, but it's also very intuitive and quite easy to pick up with a little bit of training. So I think that's why we ended up with Checkbox, and I think it's been a good choice.
Very cool. No, very, very cool. So much gold there, Amy. I never think about balancing urgent and important tasks as anything other than the magic pudding problem from now on. It is now the magic pudding.
The minute I heard that one, it's just the only way I can look at it.
That's wonderful.
I think in the book, though, someone tried to steal the magic pudding, and I know one's stealing this magic pudding. So
no, it's not a magic pudding people are particularly keen on.
No.
What about solving for it? What are some of the learnings and some of the wins from trying to devour the magic pudding? What were some of the things that you tried and maybe the magic pudding was still there and it was all consuming, and some that maybe you managed to step away from the pudding and some really good stuff came from it?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I've realized over time is that if you want to change a process that's just a bit clunky, you want to make it work faster, you do have to slow down so that you can ultimately speed up. So I think that's kind of something that we've had to keep in mind while we've at least in the implementation phase, because it does take you a little while to figure out how best to use these solutions and to skill people up. So you do need to have that kind of awareness that is just, it's something that you need to do. And I think for that reason, we've been really lucky that we've had senior leaders really supportive. So we've had our chief legal officer who's really supportive, and we've had senior leaders. So, for instance, the general counsels from the different regional areas really pushing and really being supportive of efforts to raise awareness of Checkbox and to spruik its use. And so I think that gives people a bit more freedom to just take the time, which I think is helpful. So when we first got Checkbox, I think we had a model where we had a limited number of apps that we could build because we're still trying to find our feet. And I think that informed a lot of the way we rolled Checkbox out. So essentially we required, and we stopped and thought about it, and we required, it seemed sort of counterintuitive to take busy lawyers out of their day-to-day jobs and have them be the ones programming the apps. So we assembled teams, and we had the lawyers identifying problems in their business. We'd assign paralegals because they were there was a view that they were better at it. I'm showing my age, but there was a few that they were younger, a bit more tech savvy. And so there was a bit of a reluctance on the part of the lawyers to actually get in there and do coding. So they were all trained up, but the focus was really on training up the paralegals, which was great, and it worked at the time, I think. So essentially we put in place processes where each of the regional teams were encouraged to develop their own app, but we also required them to put together a business case and really demonstrate ROI, quite formal ROI for building an app. And we required that they very formally structured out the process flow that they were going to automate. And we also required that they came up with things like a comms plan and an approval process before you could launch. So, and that was good because I think that it sounds a bit clunky in retrospect, but that's, we're a manufacturing company. We like process. We like a bit of red tape. So, but it worked at the time because we got some real watershed apps up. So, in quite quick time frames. So we had I think one of our Checkbox relationship partner described it as the most complex NDA generator she'd ever seen in her life. So it's really good. It's quite tailored and it's quite purpose specific. So you can get some really good outcomes using that generator. And we've also got things like gifts and entertainment registers. We've got tools to analyze rather complex delegations of authority across the business, which is just one of those questions that you get all the time. You don't necessarily, just takes a few minutes out of your day to answer it because no one can sift through our rather complex tables. But in any case, we also got some apps. We also focused on apps that could be used by stakeholders in other business units. So there was that, it raised awareness with other teams particularly within corporate. So it was really helpful because it proved those big watershed apps really proved the value of Checkbox, and it really kind of heightened awareness. So I think that was helpful. But I think we realized, it seemed to me that after the teams had built those first apps, there was a little bit of it died off a little bit. There was a little bit of, there wasn't quite as much activity. So no one was building the second app, which was kind of frustrating. And it was a bit of a problem to solve. So we tried a whole lot of things. And as I said before, we were really lucky because we had a lot of support from our senior leaders. So building apps and seeking opportunities for legal automation became formal KPIs for a lot of the team members. So that was helpful. It just sort of kind of keeps it front of mind, and it gives a little bit of accountability, which I think is important in this space where it's not something that is screaming at you otherwise. I think, and we organized we had a global legal conference where we had all of our regional teams in the same area, and it was a great conference. But we made Checkbox. We had a showcase of all the apps that each of the teams had delivered, and I think that was good too because people were very conscious that was happening. So it encouraged each of the teams to finish their apps and really, just have a really good news story to tell at the conference. So I think all of that, driving awareness, elevating the profile, and also making people accountable is a really key part. But I think, but as I said, I mean, that requires a lot of effort on the senior leaders. It required a lot of effort on my part too, because you have to constantly keep pushing people to do the work. So I think we tried it kind of occurred to me that maybe we were just putting too many barriers in place for people to actually build these apps. So at that point, so I started thinking about what the problem was. And I realized that there was a bit of because we had the paralegals doing the work and not the lawyers in terms of the actual build, I thought it seemed to me that the lawyers they didn't really understand fully what Checkbox could do. So, and how they could bring so they weren't really looking for opportunities to automate. So I thought, well, okay, we need to have the lawyers working, and that's the whole point of that's really the whole point of Checkbox, right, Dan? Like it is easy. And I think once you know how to use it, and it doesn't take very long to upskill. It takes like maybe a couple of hours. So it was really that. I think so. Upskilling the lawyers on that front was really, really helpful. And I think that also let them know what they could do with it. They understood the functionality better. They were more able to spot opportunities for automation. And it just seemed to work better. It also stopped the bottleneck with the paralegals as well, because they weren't waiting for like a couple of paralegals to build umpteen apps. We also, around that time, we had increased our license. So I think we've almost got unlimited now, but for some contexts. So it just removed that need to prove up ROI, because I think, and then at that point you don't need to be finding apps that are going to be world beaters. Like you just need to, if there's a problem and you can solve it, and you can solve it quickly, and you don't need to go and talk to some senior leader about it and get approval. You can just build it and go, and it takes you less time. It might take an hour, and you've just solved this problem that kind of, if you've got, probably other people have got it too. And it was really helpful. And I think too, and like for instance, you could just one time I came out of a meeting with one of the paralegals where we'd been talking about a bigger app that we were building, and someone asked us a question about who they needed to speak to in the legal team about a particular document. And I was like, oh, I have no idea who deals with that. And it was a bit daggy, but we're like, how good would that be if there was an app for that? So we came straight out of that meeting. We built a really small app. We selfishly focused it on the IP space. So I built an IP directory so that people within the business, if they had an IP question generally and they didn't really know, if they're out in the back blocks of China dealing with an IP issue, they might not necessarily know that I exist, let alone what I would be able to help them on as opposed to someone else in the team. So we just built a little app so that if they had a question, it would take that question to the right lawyer. So it was just, and we thought, oh, we'll just do that quickly, see if it works. If it works, we'll scale it up. If not, we haven't really lost anything. Let's just try. And I think, being open to those sort of innovation opportunities is really where you can make a lot of difference. So that's really been, there's been a big learning in that field in terms of how we approach it. So there's still room for those big, bright line, exciting apps that are going to revolutionize the way you work. But there's also, I think you've got to be conscious of little opportunities to automate.
That's right. Yeah. We talk a lot on these sessions, and it almost summarizes a lot of what you've just said about the difference between like perfect and good, and how they tend to be used when you're launching things. So you go 18 months down the process of like mapping out this grand plan to automate the whole of legal in the whole of the company. And at the end of 18 months, you actually have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
You bite off little chunks, and you have a little IP directory app, and then you do a DOA app, and you get your NDA sorted, and you start biting off these little chunks. You end up with this suite of solutions and all of this time back. So then that pudding starts shrinking. It's kind of cool.
For sure. And I mean, you can start, the beauty of being able to build something for yourself is that you can just build something and you can just trial it out for yourself. So if it helps you do a process, you don't have to make it widely available. You don't have to tell anyone else. And if it works, then it works. Then start sharing it around, or letting, you know, your stakeholders in the business have a go at it. But otherwise, you can just have a little sort of small beta test going in your own little environment, and it's hard to fail.
Yeah, that's right. Or it gives you the opportunity to, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's nothing.
Really fail and learn forward, sort of a.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, you can fail, but there's sort of no risks associated with it. You just sort of have a bit of a, you know, fiddle in the background and just try to refine, or you can let it go and it doesn't really matter. But
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop you there for 1 second. We've just got a question that's come in from Kelly, and she's asking around if you use any different matter management systems, and like other than managing things in Checkbox, and are there compatibility challenges or are there integrations? What does that kind of look like with regards to more of the matter management side of things?
Yeah, we use a system called Zakia to manage our matters, and that seems to be pretty. It works for us. It ties in with our document management system, which is NetDocs, and I think it's good. It kind of we haven't integrated it with Checkbox yet, but it seems to work pretty well in terms of getting a view on who's doing what, what's been happening, what capacity is like across the team, which is, you know, pretty hard when you've got a senior team and you've got subject matter experts doing stuff in their own little worlds. So it seems to work for us.
Very cool. Worth noting that there's an out-of-the-box integration with Zakia, if you did want to.
There was, yeah, yes. Haven't got there yet, but
yeah. So workflow into matter creation, and yeah, it's awesome. Very.
No, I thought there was. We just haven't gotten down that path just yet.
Now let's chug on. Let's take the angle of. Let's set the angle of buy-in. I'm really interested in the how from what you've said. You've talked about all of these in-house, in-team operational buy-in issues, and some really amazing progress that you've made in terms of empowering lawyers to build apps and a process with paralegals and rich ROI generation, and that all seems really, really great. What happens when we extend the lens out to the business user and the business user's interaction with those tools? What does that look like, and how do you get buy-in, and how do you keep engagement with those teams?
Yeah, so I've built and rolled out a few apps now, and my view on the more successful apps are the ones that I involve the stakeholders with, like the business stakeholders with, in the build phase. I'll often, particularly if I've got some, you know, core buddies in teams that I'm trying to work with, I'll talk to them and just get them a sort of safe space. Like, I was thinking about automating this. What are your thoughts? I think when you're actually when you're actually trying to build a solution, you're really trying to build it for that person in the business who's using it. So you kind of need to understand what they want, how they would intend to use it, what their processes are as well, so that you can get a better solution. I mean, you can't really the best way to get buy-in, you can send as many comms as you like, but the best way to get buy-in is to actually have something that makes someone else's life easier. So I think that's probably my main takeaway. So I think involving them across all stages of the process of the build process is important. So, like, you talk to them about the process up front, you can have a few, you know, trusted people within the business that you let have a test of some of the early versions of the apps, and I think also, so it's helpful to have those trusted people in the business, because they'll give you good feedback, and, you know, it's a sort of a safe space, and they want to help you as well, and I think that's great. So you can even just down to things like tailoring the language is helpful, because sometimes, like, I think lawyers think about, you know, we think in sort of formal sort of legal terms, and that doesn't mean anything out there, and sometimes, like, you have to let that go. So I think even for one of the first apps I built was this NDA generator, and the language was very formal, like it was very, very lawyery. And I got feedback I went to one of my colleagues in the global marketing team, and I was like, do you want to just be one of my demo users of this? And she's like, this is horrific. Like, the language is so confronting. And I was like, oh, it was good feedback, because it's a lot more informal now. It's quite friendly, it's quite casual. And people just seem to get it a bit more, as opposed to like fronting up with some sort of complex term or seemingly formal term that they don't really know how to deal with. I think too, but beyond the trusted advisors that you're in a safe space with, I think it's also good to get advice from people that are going to be a bit prickly, because sometimes they are the ones that you actually get the real gold from. Like, I think they challenge you. Even if you sort of think they're being a bit unreasonable, sometimes there are nuggets in there that you can solve. And at the end of the day, you've got to bring those people along on the journey. So if you can listen to them and make them feel involved, I think that makes your app better, makes them more likely to use it. So that's probably my main take.
Cool. No, I really love that. And I've got a couple of questions on that. But before we do, Emma sent in a question, one of our guests. And the question is, did Bluescope use the app for more than B2C consumer sales matters issues, or was it also useful in the B2B transaction side of things? Interesting question around use cases.
Yeah, for sure. It's only used, so I'm just trying to play it back, but it's only used internally, so it's not an outward facing app. We use it like I will build apps for my own purposes, just to help me get through my own work quicker. I'll build things so that I can get better instructions out of a stakeholder without asking the same instructions. So will be cross sort of functional unit, I suppose. I don't, and we'll have, and the lawyers will have sort of generic apps as well that sort of sit on our SharePoint site, which is like our group intranet, so that people can just access, information tools and things like that as well. Is that, I'm hoping I answered the question there. We don't typically use it. We don't use it externally, basically.
Yeah, that's perfect. Absolutely. No, that makes sense. Emma, I am really interested to sink my teeth into that question in a little bit more detail. So register on the poll to have a conversation, because it sounds like you might have, sitting behind that question, some ideas. And I'd love to workshop them with you for all of those different sections: B2C, consumer, sales matters, issues, integrations with Salesforce, and complex approval workflows, and redlining with clients, and all sorts of bits and pieces. We've got features for them, but it is specific to use case as to whether someone else is doing it, I suppose. But yeah, would love to have a conversation, Emma, after, if you wanted to register, for sure.
Yeah.
Amy, you talked about your sort of favorite, your friendlies internally, and then some of that prickly feedback. Having worked with you a little bit over the last year and a bit, you have this really beautiful human way of thinking about problem solving, and that culminated in a crown jewel experience, I think, which was a hackathon that we ran recently. So I wonder actually if you could talk a little bit about how you thought about getting to that point, an idea, what the event was about, and what it inspired, and what it looked like.
Yeah, sure. I guess it flowed out. It was a bit of a, one of those random thoughts that kind of hits you in the middle of where you're trying to probably doing something far more sort of serious, like something far more legal. But anyway, it hit me out of nowhere, and I kind of I realized, as I was talking before about the challenges and the barriers to entry that we sort of created for ourselves, I realized that we needed to get, I wanted to build a bit of drive. I wanted to build a bit of excitement around how the team used Checkbox, and I wanted to sort of have a bit of a relaunch, I guess. So I asked Monica, and who's our one of our great Checkbox contacts and Dan about a hackathon, which apparently is a word that I'm using entirely wrong, which shows that I'm not that tech savvy. Anyway, it was we basically had a group session. I carved out about an afternoon for the entire corporate and the global business unit legal team. So that included COSEC as well. And they're all quite senior lawyers, so I gave them plenty of notice. But I made them all come along to this session. Monica from Checkbox assisted us to chair. So I required them to refresh on Checkbox training online. I required them to think of an automation, the attendees to think of an automation opportunity before they came along to the session. And I had a fairly aggressive comms plan where I poked them sort of every couple of days for weeks on end. But essentially the idea was that all of the lawyers, I wanted to prove that Checkbox was super quick and easy to use. So I required all of these lawyers to come along for an afternoon, sit down and build an app. Like they were not just not allowed out of the room until you've sat and built something. So it was fun. Like we're a loud sort of slightly obnoxious team, but it was a fun session. It was everyone was sort of learning off each other. Monica was there to sort of just to smooth the way. So if you encountered any problems, like, if you're sitting on your own at your desk, if you encountered a problem, you'd be like, oh, I should solve this, but actually I'll just answer this email, and then 3 days would go past. So I think it just it kind of greased the wheels to have someone there. It just made the process really quick. So at the end of it, we all came out with an app that was either completed or near about completed. And it was just, we're going to hold them more frequently with sort of a semi-regular cadence, so that it just it reminds people and it helps people solve issues. And I think it was a good way it was a very exciting way to do it. So, and it was quite successful and well received. So it just I think the main thing everyone came out was like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was so easy to build something. They were quite excited about it. It was good.
That's so cool. I loved the whole concept. The thing that struck me as I've been sort of getting into this Checkbox thing and working with you guys is that when you're looking at process automation and you're looking at logic puzzles and you're looking at documents and you're looking at legal use cases, it's very hard to be creative and to feel like you have permission to be creative and have fun. So that experience kind of opened that gate and allowed this fairly loud, in your words, legal team to get in a room and to explore and experience and create something. And it was very, very different, I think, from their normal day-to-day. So super, super exciting.
Totally. Yeah, it was good. It was you're right. It is a matter of being creative. And I think having knowing that you had to have an idea for a process to be automated by a particular date that's not too far out. It just and my aggressive communication strategy was I think it kind of pushed, it just kind of kept it front of mind. So people were looking for opportunities, and I, just to be clear, I didn't want anyone to build anything that was going to change the world. I didn't want it to be any one of those big apps that required heaps of thinking and heaps of process points. I just wanted something quick and easy that you could solve right then and there. So it was a great experience, and I think we'll definitely do more of them and build that in across the legal teams.
Amazing. All right, quick break. A couple of questions. One has come through. It's quite long, so I'll read through it, and then please ask me to read it again. I'm happy to. From Isabella. The question is, are any of your apps for document automation fully self-serve? How do you deal with higher risk engagements? Are there more questions in the apps? Do certain responses trigger the need for legal review in certain engagements? Do your apps deal with the end-to-end process of doc creation to approval to signature to doc storage? In order to get lawyers to build apps for themselves, do you allow them dedicated time to do so? Lots of questions in there.
Lots of questions. All right. So Can we do them one by one? Is that okay?
But so any document automation apps fully self-serve?
Yes. So yes, some of them are. But so just it's my favorite example because I'm the most familiar with it. But it's a good question. And it was actually a big it was a massive one of those prickly stakeholders I was referring to before. Had a real issue with the NDA generator being self-serve. So the issue was that in the space that the stakeholder and I both work in, a lot of NDAs are generated, or a lot of NDAs are requested when people actually need collaboration agreements. They think they're going to go off and talk to third parties and they're going to share some ideas and then they'll carry on. But actually what they're doing is sharing IP and they're looking to start a project where they're making new IP. So you obviously need a different type of agreement. You need more of like a collaboration, joint development agreement. So, and that's where having that human contact can solve a lot of those issues, because you can actually, if they need to come to you to get the document, then you can have that conversation then and there. I think, and I got feedback from this particular stakeholder just along the sort of the journey. And it boiled down, I realized sort of, it took a while because he was sort of skating around the edges and giving different bits of feedback and just sort of being generally negative about the automation process. But then it became apparent that what he was concerned about was that he was going to lose control, that he was not going to have those conversations. There were going to be people randomly entering into NDAs that might cross over other NDAs, or might be, NDAs sort of actually being collaboration agreements, but not really doing the job. So once I kind of got to that point, so the NDA generator is available. It's available to anyone in the business to use. There are prompts throughout the NDA, the generator, that people should take that to legal. To a greater or lesser extent, people do follow that. I get lots of requests to review the NDAs, which is actually, it's a much simpler process because you just know that you know what you have to check. Like, they haven't touched any of the operative clauses. They're really just you're just looking at the key terms in the context of what they're trying to do. So it's a quick review. I think I was very conservative in the way in any sort of self-serve document management system. I tend to make the clauses very conservative, so they basically can't hurt themselves when they use it, or they can't hurt the company. So I think that's important to keep in mind. But the other thing is, it occurs to me that document management piece is, there are still policies in place that you need to get legal involved. You need to get proper DOA. You need to get the proper level of authority before you can sign off the document. And I think that's all stuff that you should keep in mind. But the document generation itself is a separate process to that. So I think as long as you've got the prompt to have legal review, with this particular stakeholder, because he was really keen, I have a requirement that people let you know what team you're in before you can proceed. So if anyone generates a document that's from this person's team, the app will notify this stakeholder, so that the stakeholder's got, and we'll send him a copy of the document generated. So he's got an opportunity to see who's doing what and with who and why, and then he's got an opportunity to chase that person up if he's got any concerns. But yes, we have some that are fully integrated. You can use DocuSign. You can, we do have apps that manage the process end to end. I'm just rambling on now, but it actually, that realization that people might be entering into NDAs or might think they need an NDA when they actually need a collaboration agreement, that point actually generated another app being developed. So now if people ask for an NDA, I have an app that I can use and this particular stakeholder can use to help people work through a series of questions so that we can gather instructions for what they're trying to do. And then that can, if they only need an NDA, if they're just having preliminary conversations with a view to doing the project later, it just spits them out to the NDA app, and we don't need to take it any further, or don't need to take the conversation offline. But if there's something in there that flags a concern, we can go and step in at that point and have a proper conversation. So it's I think, yeah, it's a matter of like your own risk assessment. It's a matter of picking, it's a matter of being really clear about what problem you're solving. So I mean, at the end of the day, if you're trying to solve the problem for generating an NDA, a stakeholder in the business could have a template of any legal document saved on their computer somewhere. So I mean, they could pick that up and have a crack at it themselves anyway. So you're not really, and that's still the same issue. All you're doing is simplifying that drafting process, with depending on how you go about the build process and what you're trying to solve. So I think it's really key to, one of the things I've learned is that it's really important just to really step out your processes in quite a lot of detail. So that's so that you understand exactly where your process begins and ends, and then you can work around that.
Awesome. Amy, I think you covered most of the questions.
Oh, did I? Okay. Yeah, sure. I was trying to remember them.
We talked a little bit about how do we deal with high risk engagements, and are there more questions that trigger certain things in certain apps? So the ability for that particular team owner to get that notification when his team interact with the NDA app, all of that sort of stuff. End-to-end processes, you touched on that as well. Yeah, amazing. Thank you for that.
Cool. That's okay.
And a thank you that just came in from Isabella as well.
Oh, thanks. No worries.
Next question, if we can plow on to another one, Amy.
Sure.
From Kelly here. How big is your legal team? How many different apps do you need and why? Can you give a few examples, please? How many different apps do you need and why? How long is a piece of string, kind of a question, but I think with really, really good reason in this case. So yeah, talk us a little bit through the legal team construction and like the concept of baskets of different apps.
Yeah, sure. I think globally, I'm just guessing here, but I'd say we'd probably have about 40 lawyers across the globe. So it's a big-ish team, but it's not massive. We have it, particularly in corporate, at least we've probably got about 10 lawyers. And we all manage our own, functional units. So I'm IP, we've got a litigation lead, climate, and M&A as well. And we've also got quite an experience in competition. We've also got quite an experienced COSEC team as well. So there's quite a lot, but we cover specific practice areas. How many apps do you need? I guess that is a bit of a how long is a piece of string. I think, there are so many processes that you can automate. I think, honestly, the more you could automate, the better your life would generally be. I think there are, I would like, if I had the time and paralegals that weren't currently on study leave, I would be pretty keen to build up even just more say a collaboration agreement generator and things like that, so you could build and I wouldn't let anyone, speaking about high risk engagements, don't think I would let anyone in the business use that, but I would like it for myself, and I would like it so that lawyers in our team, so you could almost like stitch together a clause bank within a document. We do have things for big capital projects. We have contract selection tools, and so that people in the business, like procurement, like quite experienced people like procurement, can go and find the documents that they need to then go and negotiate. So honestly, I think you could, there are so many things that you could automate, and it's a matter of having the time and identifying those opportunities. But it is very helpful. So I think I missed a question there. There was another one in there.
Some examples, the size of the team, the number of apps. I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I haven't got a sense of how many apps we've got. Some of them are bigger than others. I think too, this sounds like I'm really giving Checkbox a plug, but I think you guys keep adding functionality, and that gets, you need a bit of time to fiddle around and play with that functionality. Like the recent AI assistant has been really helpful. So that's kind of spawned a whole lot of new apps for me, and I've loved playing around with. I think I had a beta solution there for a while, so I've been using that to even just like, it sounds a bit basic, but I get heaps of questions on how to read the IP policy and what, who's responsible for what under the IP policy, and it's just like, it's fine. You just have to like go in, log in into find the policy, read it, understand it, draft an email. It sounds like it's a simple job. It's really not hard. It's something I probably should know off the top of my head in a lot of cases, but it does take time. Like if you're in the middle of a project, you've got to stop what you're doing, start something else, and get back into your task again. So like, I just built a little chatbot that sits on top of the IP policy, and it can read the IP policy. So if anyone asks a question, it can read it for me and then spit out a sensible answer. So I've been using that and then answering questions in that way, which has been helpful. So I think, and I've built another one for, we've got a suite of contracts that are quite complicated, and there's always the same sort of question that gets asked, but just in relation to different aspects. So I built another one that, understand, can read a summary paper and can spit out the answers. So that's, I think, honestly, I think you could have as many as you liked. And I think as you show your use cases to the business, they seem to get excited about it too. So like different functional units. So for instance, risk has been really interested, HR has been really interested, all those sort of like IT, procurement, those sort of functional groups are also can find use cases as well. So it's pretty, it is how long have you got, really? How long's a piece of string?
That's awesome. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Really, really lovely words. We are passionate about delivering value into this space. We love you guys. So that's why we
love working with you. It's good.
Sure. We are getting towards the end. 5 minutes, 5 minutes left on the session. So I thought if anyone's watching and would love to ask more questions, please jump in, ask questions. The questions, I think, are bringing forth some really amazing stuff from you, Amy. So thank you for asking questions, and thank you for answering them. But to kind of summarize the formal talking points, do you have any advice for someone who is keen to dip their toe in this crazy area?
Yes, there is no advice like what you've learned the hard way, but so I think getting your senior leaders keen early, if you can get them excited, or if there is someone who is sort of predisposed to be excited about this area, like really get onto that, because that makes a huge difference in terms of visibility and accountability. I mean, you can see across the regional areas, without naming names, you can see where the general counsels who are responsible for the particular business units are super engaged and super supportive. You can see that those business units have heaps and heaps more apps being built. So I think that's a really key thing. I think feedback is key. Like just even with the hackathon, like I sought feedback after that. With every app, I'll try to get people to tell me what they think about it, and I'll try to get them to be as honest as possible, because I think those negative comments and those can actually be where the real value is. I think you kind of got to be excited yourself. Like you have to really like it, because it is, particularly if you're trying to like lead the relationship or lead the charge within the legal team on a particular, say like some opportunity like Checkbox. I think you've got to really like it. You've got to understand it yourself. You've got to be able to want to encourage people. So I think that is, because that sort of thing is contagious and it makes other people excited. And I think just be like, I don't think there's any real right way to cut legal innovation. I think it depends, who's in your team, what their level of interest is, the sort of work that they're doing. So I think, and you just got to be prepared to keep trying different things. Like, I don't think it's an endpoint. You don't sort of roll out 5 apps and you're done, you've innovated and you're good to go. You've got to keep kind of looking for opportunities, and you've got to keep finding ways to make those specific individuals in your teams want to keep looking. And that's a challenge, and you got to approach it from a whole lot of different ways, I think, just to get the most, just so something sticks with at least most of the team, at least. So whatever drives the team, you got to just go with that, I think.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think I mentioned it before, Amy, having worked with you, you have this incredible way of making it really fun and really low risk. So like get in, be creative, see what you can create or solve this complex issue. But it's always to the delight of the people who work with you. So big vote of thanks.
That's great. It's genuinely, it's a fun area. It is, like you said, it is creative, and you don't get that many opportunities to be creative as an in-house lawyer, right? So it is a fun opportunity, and it's great working with you guys.
Amy, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Also give us a bit of a window into something that's kind of hard to see from the outside. The process, the program, and the learnings is something that's really, really tough without this sort of a setting to sink our teeth into. So thank you for accommodating us for sure.
No, thank you, Ta. It's been great.
Awesome. All right, thank you, everyone.